All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Healthspan Academy. I'm your host, Craig Shearhart, and joining me today is my very special guest, Avalon Wasteneys. Avalon is an elite athlete. She basically, since 2018, has just been kind of dominating through her sport. In 2018, she was a World Cup 2 silver medalist, and also the same year was an under 23 world champion. 2019, she was a World Cup 3 bronze medalist in rowing. And then kind of the peak, I guess, was technically 2020 Olympics, which happened this past summer in Tokyo. Took home the gold in the Olympics. So very, very excited. And all that happening while she's completing an undergrad degree in psychology at the University of Victoria. So Avalon, thanks so much for being here. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk with you today.
Fantastic. So I'm sure some of this stuff you've probably already answered 1,000 times, but I really want to dive into that moment. Was there a specific moment in that race where you remember realizing you'd won gold, or was it just kind of all a blur? Were you just full of adrenaline? Like, how did that kind of unroll?
Well, I'd say that the lead up to the race is actually one of those things where I was fully aware that we had every possibility of winning gold. And even in the first 5 strokes, I remember thinking, that was it. We nailed it.
Wow.
And we can do this. So I was very confident throughout the race. But the exact moment when I realized I had won gold is quite different, because you can believe you're going to win gold and have the mental preparation and feel like you know what it's going to feel like when you cross the finish line. But when I crossed the finish line, I was completely overwhelmed and shocked. Like
Wow.
I wasn't expecting myself to react that way. But I just started sobbing. I just couldn't hold myself back. I was just like yelling and crying. And I think it was just feelings of immense relief, honestly, because I had been so
invested and working hard.
And detail oriented with my mental headspace leading up to that moment. So it was just like exhaustion, honestly, in that moment. I was like, I did it. We're done. Like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Like, I believed in us, but what does this mean now?
Yeah,
so.
That's almost like we felt watching you. It was because like you were confident, but we really didn't. I didn't even know you were favored to be on a podium. I was just like, this is amazing. Menee's cousins at the Olympics.
No, I don't think anyone. No one was thinking we were favorited, right? We were 4th. That's what we were ranked as. So took a lot of people by surprise.
So you guys felt like you had pretty good chances of reaching that podium and potentially taking gold going in.
Yeah, I would say that, no one knew what was going to happen at the Olympics. We hadn't competed in 2 years, right? So in my mind leading up to the Olympics, I was just thinking, look, this is anyone's game. It's all about who is mentally most prepared to do this. Because at that point, I knew that we were all technically going to be really proficient and we were all going to be incredibly fit.
Right.
And I was just like, it's who really wants it and who's going to go for it. So we were just kind of going in like, we're not going to put anyone on a pedestal. We're going to go in thinking like we're ranked just the same as everyone else, even though in 2019 we placed 4th.
That's amazing. Yeah. I guess that it all starts with that, right? If you don't have that mentality, the physical will never follow. So that's very cool. So what's been the biggest change in your life since winning gold? What are some of the things that have changed that maybe you wouldn't have expected?
I would say my daily life is pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Not too much has changed in that way. Maybe more like when I meet people and they find out that I've achieved this, they kind of are a little bit shocked. But for the most part, I'm living relatively the same life. I would say the changes are more of a on the mental side again.
Right.
Just because I had that confidence and that complete trust and belief in myself, but getting the results obviously just confirms that. And it's more just like, I'm like, okay, great. Like I did what I said I was going to do, and I was telling people I could do it. And so that it's just more that feeling of being, of having that completion in my confidence.
That's very cool. So what does that do to your motivation moving forward? Do you feel like you'd be more hungry if you'd finished with a silver or a bronze? Because there's nothing above number 1, right? Like, what's your next bar to set?
That's very true. And it's an interesting question for sure. I actually like to think back to some previous results when you asked me this question, because I remember my first rowing international regatta where we placed 2nd at World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
And then immediately after that, I went to U23 World Championships and we won gold. And immediately after that period, I just suddenly started feeling really mentally drained. And I just kind of had this feeling like that was it. Like we did it. Oh my goodness. Like that was easier than I thought. Like I was expecting a challenge. Like, is this it? And over that period, I felt like I was just, mentally hard on myself. And then I proceeded to not make the team for the senior world championships that year because I had just burned myself out.
Yeah.
And then by not making the team, I felt like my motivation increased and I was able to take a summer to learn to love rowing again and realize that the motivation that I'm feeling doesn't come from results. It comes from me feeling like I can continuously grow in my sport and face new challenges all the time. So it became less about the results. So I think my motivation really wouldn't be any different if we had placed second or if we had won gold. Right now, I'm just looking for my next challenge and how I can continuously be in that growth mindset throughout my career as an athlete.
I love that. So you've sort of managed to fall in love with the process and make it more about the journey, I guess, than the result.
Exactly.
I love that.
If you're focused on the result, then like you're gonna build it up and you're gonna build it up and you're gonna get to that point and you're gonna maybe achieve it.
Right.
And then you're gonna probably realize that not much is gonna really change and it's completely in your head and how you handle it. So I think it's really important to be in love with the process, not just the end result. As corny as that is.
Yeah. No, that's legit. I love that. That's kind of a part of the coaching process. We kind of like try to get people to wrap around getting just to fall in love with the process. Cause this isn't just, a part-time thing. Like whether it's you're training for gold or training for like functioning better in retirement, it's all on the scale, right? So you're in it for long-term, you might as well go full in. I love that.
You're not enjoying the day-to-day process. And like for rowing, you're competing a tiny fraction of the amount you're training.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
if you're only focused on that one result, then it's like, wow, you're going to have a pretty miserable time maybe throughout the year.
Most like 99% of your life is miserable, which is nobody wins. Cool. I want to talk about your first conversation with your mom because she has a history with the Olympics. And obviously I'm sure she was like, could not have been more proud. Do you remember how that conversation went first when your mom, after you'd won gold?
I was getting a lot of messages in that time. I remember like opening my phone and it was just like blowing up. My phone was like hot because I had so many messages coming through. But I did immediately try to respond to them. And I just FaceTimed my whole family because I felt like I really wanted to share that with all of them. And they were kind of like giddy. Like they also didn't really know how to respond to it, I think, because it was just like beyond all expectations. They also believed, but they were trying to like monitor their expectations and not place pressure on me to get a certain result. Yeah. So for them, it was just like, I think it's just as overwhelming as it was for me. But apparently my mom during the whole Olympics, she just like really, really felt like we could do it. She was so positive and just kept being like, oh my goodness, like I think they walked away from that rep and they don't look that tired. And she was getting really, really excited. And my dad was kind of like, okay, Heather, like just be chill. Like, we're not going to talk to Avalon that much. Let her do her thing. She's professional. And like, whatever happens, happens. And like, maybe she'll come forth. So we can't place that pressure on her.
Right.
But she was, so when it did happen, she was just like over the moon.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, I saw some of the reactions with Claire and your uncle Steven on Facebook. And I feel like they were just as excited as anybody. So it's very cool. Does that ever get old, being like congratulated or like having people praise you? Like, does that ever wear off?
I actually sometimes kind of enjoy when they don't know.
Oh, really?
When they are pretty casual about it, because it's really exciting and I do enjoy all the enthusiasm. But sometimes it's refreshing when I meet someone new and I don't bring it up and they don't know and we just have a normal conversation. Maybe they like talk about some kind of sporting thing. And I'm just kind of like on the inside feeling like, oh, it's quite funny. Like they have no clue and that's refreshing. No idea. I remember, I met this, the boyfriend of one of my friends and he was kind of like, oh, what have you been up to recently? And I was like, oh, I took some time away from school to row. And he was like, oh yeah, you were just rowing? And I was like, yeah, just rowing.
That's it.
And then like his girlfriend was like, yeah, she just like trying to let him know, like she went to the Olympics and won gold. And yeah, it was just seeing his reaction. That was quite funny. So I welcome all reactions. If you don't know, then that's great. And if you do know, then it's fun to share the enthusiasm with other people and see their excitement. And if I have my medal, then it's even more special to share that with people.
Yeah. Just casually pull it out.
Yeah, no, I usually don't have it on me, but occasionally I have, because I've been taking it to a different event or something, and then I'll run into someone and be like, I guess what? I actually have it with me.
Oh, that's very cool. Nice card to pull. So you mentioned, we talked a little bit about your family. I know you used to be a competitive skier. What was it like growing up? Was sports like thrust upon you like aggressively? It was just kind of expected? Did it something like, were you pushed pretty hard as growing up, or like how did that roll? How did that kind of pan out for you?
A mixture.
Okay.
I think that I was definitely like pushed into sports, particularly skiing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, pushed to fall in love with the fun of it and
cool.
find ways that I could grow.
Right.
I think I was also a very shy child, and I had a lot of anxiety. So there are many times where I didn't want to do skiing or different sports. And so this is one of those moments where I could say, yeah, I was pushed in sport. And people might be like, oh, like, should parents do that? Whatever. But I was just a kid who was really anxious. So I was actually really grateful that my dad particularly would force me to go to ski training, because he knew that I would come home so much happier after having done it. Yeah. So yes, I was pushed, but it was always in a way that was for my own personal growth. And I'm very grateful for it now. Yeah. Because I didn't necessarily know what I wanted when I was a kid. Right.
Yeah. Who does?
But they also, they know that. They also push more like healthy lifestyle and, at like loving the outdoors. And we grew up in a place that was the outdoors. Right. So that was also, very much a focus of my parents. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about your training. Obviously this is like, you know, you mentioned you took some time away from the rest of your life to do this. You got sponsored by RBC, right? Give me a snapshot of what your training looks like. How many days a week were you training? What kind of volume we're looking at? Sprints versus distance. How did that look like? What's a snapshot in the day of life of Avalon's training?
So we usually train 2 to 3 times a day, 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week.
Wow.
We don't really get weekends. We get maybe like a couple weeks off a year for maybe like Christmas. And during that whole time you're training as well. Mm-hmm. So the physical aspect of being incredibly fit is obviously really important in all sports, but in rowing, it's so important.
That like that's capacity,
really driven into us. Yeah. There's no time really to waste, and everyone's trying to be as physically proficient as possible. So I would say during the winter months, we do a lot more endurance training. So that could be 20 to 30 kilometer rows in the mornings. And then we would do weight training and maybe another shorter session on the water in the afternoon. That's basically about building that base up, right, and putting as much time on the water as possible. And then as we start nearing summertime or competition period, we start shortening up and doing a lot more sprint work and power-based sessions to really prime our muscles for racing, essentially, I guess. And so it kind of changes. And that's more when it gets to the fun stuff. Winter's pretty grueling usually. Right. Like long sessions, long hours on the water in cold weather. And then the summertime is when it's like that fun, sparky stuff. Yeah.
It's like, what is that quote? I will do today what others won't, so tomorrow I can do what they can't. Yeah. So when you talk about power training, do you and bar like strength work, do you guys work on the Olympic lift specifically for power, or what does that look like with your strength? Do you like barbell work, or give me an example of some of that stuff?
We do quite a lot of Olympic lifts. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say I know a whole ton about what we do, and I can't necessarily speak super technically just because I usually am just given my program and I do it. Sure. But we do a lot of cleans, and we do a lot of deadlifts and front squats, back squats, all that sort of stuff. Basically any type of movement that is incorporating your full body. Mm-hmm. And that's just really important because in the rowing stroke, it is completely your whole body. Everything's working, even your toes. So it's important to do things like clean that really incorporate all that.
For sure. Yeah. I can't really, I'm terrible in the water, but I spend a lot of time on an erg. We do that in the gym a lot. What's the biggest difference between being in the water versus being on an erg?
Yeah. So back a few years ago, spent a lot of time on the ergs actually. But then in this last couple of years, not so much. It kind of depends on what your coach thinks is important. So it's an easily accessible tool, but personally, I think that sometimes the stationary erg can actually not be that helpful. It's really good at making you fit, but you lose that technical aspect.
Right.
The catch is really important for rowing and having
motion.
that feeling. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So being on things like the RP3, the Row Perfect erg, which allows you to
pivot,
learn to stabilize and balance and feel the pickup and move with the boat. That is a lot better for our training. But the erg makes you really fit. So that's why it is good.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to grow technically, definitely not the most helpful tool. But
so you're probably not going to go straight from an erg to a podium at the Olympics.
No, I think you can. Like, a lot of people love them, but I think in this last couple of years, we've really seen that we did very little work on ergs. Like, I can count on my hand how many times I went on an erg, and versus previous years where I spent a lot of time on them. And obviously it paid off this year.
For sure. That's amazing. Let's talk about mobility and recovery. That's obviously a big part of the whole process. When you got that kind of training volume, how many hours per week would you say you're putting into like mobility and recovery work?
Probably not enough, honestly.
Yeah.
I would go through phases where I sometimes would just be so tired that I just think, oh, I don't want to do this. But then I would start noticing that maybe I was having more difficulty to get to the catch in the boat, or I would just be feeling more run down. And then I'd be like, oh my goodness, I need to get on this. So I would usually try to spend like, it would add up throughout the day, but maybe like an hour a day of just stretching and mobility, and trying to find little moments throughout my busy schedule where I would just be standing still for a second and I'd be like, okay, I can just stretch my leg right now.
Just build it into your day.
Exactly. Like sometimes it's difficult to feel like you have the time to set aside like an hour just to sit on the floor and stretch.
Sounds
but
super
it is
fun when
really,
you put it that
really
way.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like, oh, I have things to do. I have school. I want to go to my friends. I want to do all these other things.
Yeah.
Or I'm really tired. I just want to go to bed. So it's like finding the little moments where you can just take a second and just stretch as much as you can. Or but we'd also do mobility before every session. Right. We would do some sort of dynamic warm up and mobility, and then we'd add them into also our weight sessions as well. And I do think it was every time I got back into my routine of doing it, I would immediately notice payoff. And it was really, really important. It's just sometimes not the fun thing you want to do. Yeah,
for sure. Do you track your numbers in recovery, like your heart rate variability or anything like that, your sleep schedule, your deep sleep? Do you have like a sleep app, or how invested are you in your recovery?
Some people have like, what do they call it? The Whoop.
I've got
them. And my teammates use those. Yeah. And they're quite invested in it. I never got onto that. I was considering towards the end. I thought maybe next squad I will actually start doing that. Yeah. But I was just on my own quite conscious of that. And I was really on it with my sleep. I would make sure I was getting at least 9.5 hours every night. Right. So that was something I definitely prioritized. But I didn't necessarily have the tracking tools to do it.
Yeah, fair enough. 9.5. I'm sure if you're sleeping 9.5, you're probably doing pretty well.
Pretty good.
It's been a few years since I've hit that number.
No, I know now that I'm not training as much. I'm like, oh great, 7 hours. Like that's fine.
Yeah.
That's crazy to think. Like I would be like, oh my goodness, I only got 9 hours last night. I'm going to bed kind of late.
Yeah.
I'd be worried about that. And now I'm like, oh wow, that's quite a lot.
Yeah, fair enough. I want to talk quickly about nutrition. There's obviously so many different directions and so many different theories between, your macros. We go high carb, we go high fat. How much protein do we need? Do you have a nutrition coach? Do you track your macros? What does your nutrition strategy look like?
Yeah, we do have a nutritionist that we work with, and it kind of varies on the person. Everyone needs very different things.
Mm-hmm.
For myself, the main focus was high caloric density, basically.
Yeah.
Like get as many calories into her as we possibly can. Yeah. So I was on mass gainers. I was taking all the supplements. I was doing everything. And that's because I'm an athlete who kind of redlines, which means I'm always on the verge, it seems, of injury or exhaustion, because I'm pushing myself and my body quite hard every day. And I don't necessarily have
an off switch.
The off switch. And then also my body, I'm just more on the lean side. I don't really have that like extra cushion necessarily, which is something that I am keen to work on for this year, or over this period where I'm not training as much, because it is really important. Right. Because it helps so much with injury and sickness.
For sure.
So the big focus for me was just like, it doesn't matter what it is, just eat as much as you can. So there were periods where I was eating, when I was trying to gain weight, I think close to like 7,000 calories.
Wow. It's crazy.
But then
sounds like most people's dream, right? They're like, man, I can eat donuts all day, but it's like exhausting.
It sounds like a dream. It's not. It's pretty tough. Yeah. I'm sure you know.
I've never quite hit those numbers, but back when I was like a little skinny, little 17-year-old trying to, like, my height, I'm like 130, like just string bean. And I just crushed everything, fast food, donuts, everything. Yeah. That was the only way for me to get it on.
Exactly.
So you have to do whatever you can do. Yeah.
It becomes like a chore almost. You're like, okay, I guess I have to
eat again. Yeah.
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 But I had a period where I actually was able to gain more weight. And then I got into a much more sustainable amount of food that I was eating. And that was so much better. So I kind of try to sit a little bit heavier during the winter months when my training level is higher. And then as racing approaches, it's okay to lean down a little bit more.
Yeah. Fair enough. Cool. I want to talk a little bit about the mental game. So you kind of talked about that leading up to it, that confidence, that rock solid, like you knew off the bat. That obviously doesn't happen overnight. How much focus do you put on the mental piece? Do you do like visualization? Do you do like meditation? Do you have like a mental game routine that you follow?
I'm just going to clear my throat for a second there.
Yeah, no worries.
No, it's just like, oh no, I just have the...
All good.
Sorry.
No worries.
Yeah. In terms of mental preparation, I would say that's like my number one thing. And that is something that I invest a lot of time into, and something that I do think makes me stand out from the crowd on the competition level. Mental routine, I don't necessarily have a strict thing that I do. I spend a lot of time journaling and recording my thoughts. And trying my best to, in training, replicate how I'm going to feel on race day. I think that's really important, and not something we always focus on. There's a lot of, priming our muscles and making sure that we're going to feel the same on race day that we would in training, and trying to replicate that. But then there isn't so much of that focus on being mentally in the same place that you would be when you're on the start line in the Olympics. Right. And that was something that I was very aware of and tried my best to replicate throughout the year, especially because we weren't having opportunities to race. So I made it a goal that anytime I was doing a session that was some sort of a race, or I was actually doing a race against teammates, I would try my best to get nervous and place pressure on myself and almost pretend that I was about to do my Olympic final.
That's
and
interesting.
Obviously, like, you can't get quite to the same level, and it's important not to be living in a state of stress the whole time.
For sure, yeah.
But I would go, okay, Avalon, like, let's get nervous. Let's do a little bit of breathing, hyperventilation, just to get that physiological response, which would then in turn make me feel like I was nervous.
Yeah.
And I basically would approach every session like it was an opportunity to win Olympic gold, because I think that it was really important. So the lead up was the most exciting part in being strict with myself and making sure I was mentally ready to go. And I actually recently was reading back through an old journal, and I found an entry where I think it was November last year, where I was definitely struggling a little bit, and I was going through a bit of a rough patch. And I wrote down a list of things that I wanted to accomplish in the next 2 years. And at the very top of the list was Olympic gold medalist.
Wow.
And in that moment, I went, okay, I'm going to decide. Like, I wrote in the next thing that I was like, one of my strengths is optimism and looking after myself mentally. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure that I'm mentally prepared for this, not just physically. Because
that's amazing.
Yeah, you can trust your coaches, you can trust your strength coaches and your physiologists and all that, and be like, okay, they're going to do what they need to do for me. I just need to show up and give my best every day, and I can trust their training program.
Right.
But then on your own, you have to recognize that no one's necessarily checking in as much on how you're doing mentally, and that's something you have to definitely watch out for yourself.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because it's not tangible. Like, that's not something you can measure, and without knowing any different, everyone assumes you're fine, but you got pressures. That's fascinating. I've actually never heard of an athlete that tries to make themselves nervous. I've heard of like the hyperventilating technique to kind of get yourself in that sympathetic state. But that's next level. That's very cool. I've never heard of someone trying to make themselves nervous, but obviously paid dividends.
So you're going to get to the start line, and like, I remember doing training sessions where people thought, or we did like a race simulation, and everyone was like, wow, I felt so calm and good. It was great. And I was like, do you think we're going to feel that on the Olympics? There's no chance. I hope that we feel nervous at the Olympics. Nerves are really, really important. Nerves mean you want it. And nerves are your body preparing you to do your absolute best.
So true.
I was like, I hope I feel nervous. And if I'm not prepared for how that's going to affect me physically and mentally, then we're maybe running into some problems here. So
for sure. That's like one of those subtle reminders, right? Like, how many major events in your life have you had where you weren't nervous going into it? Right. So it's almost like when you rewire it to be like, oh, this is like something exciting is about to happen. It's like that switch goes, and then you just and your performance kind of takes care of itself. I absolutely love that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if you're not, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to switch gears.
I was going to say I feel like in my mind, there's a difference between people who train well and who compete well. And I think I've been thinking about this a little bit. And I think the people who train well can get to those states of calmness in training, and they begin to trust themselves. And that's super great. But if you never face adversity in your training because you train well all the time, when you get to the start line, how are you going to react when those nerves hit, or when your competitor starts passing you, right? You can't
control those variables. Training, you can control most of what's going on, but you don't know what's going to happen out there, especially like in open water. Anything can happen.
You have to be prepared for absolutely everything.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you kind of alluded to being limited in competitions. Pandemic's kind of a crazy time to be getting to the Olympics. How did that impact your training and then your whole Olympic experience?
Yeah, I actually, for me, the pandemic was this silver lining. I got really, really sick immediately after the Olympics got canceled the previous year, or postponed, I should say. I got sick with mononucleosis, and I was out of training for 3 months. And bedridden and in and out of the hospital. Oh, man. And so having the Olympics postponed was, first of all, just like a huge silver lining. I thought, thank goodness I wouldn't have been going.
Right.
And then over that next bit, it was just, I had the opportunity to build the foundation up again and focus on myself versus focusing on results against other competitors. So I think that whole period was really important for myself and my teammates to garner the trust within ourselves and our training.
Yeah.
And then for leading into the Olympics, having not competed for 2 years, all I kept thinking was, okay, we have no clue what other crews are doing, and they have no clue what we've been doing. So we can just focus on ourselves. We can have the internal focus and go in knowing that it's anyone's game.
Yeah.
And we also can go in without the stress of expectations, really.
Right.
So we can go and do whatever we want. And we can choose that we want to be excellent.
Yeah.
But we don't have anyone expecting that of us, which is pretty nice.
That's pretty empowering. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, there was no, because there was no opportunity to go and do like the fun things at the Olympics, like all the different like opening ceremonies and going and socialize and check out all different sites. It meant that we had no distractions.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, okay, this is my first Olympics. There are so many times I've been told, like, don't eat yourself out of an Olympics. Don't like let yourself get exhausted or distracted by the site.
Right.
But I kept thinking, this is perfect. Like, this is mine and a lot of my other teammates' first Olympics.
Yeah.
So we can just go and like not be distracted by all the other sites and just go focused on performance. So it was perfect.
That's a true competitor's response. I feel like I feel like everybody's just been like in this dark place in this pandemic. So I'm happy to hear that. This is kind of a shining light for you and a chance to really to showcase what you can do. And you kind of alluded to this, that work-life balance. How you prioritize that? Like, you obviously training's got to be like right near the top of the list, if not number one, and then school and family. And how do you decide when you need to take a break from something and kind of step your focus a little further into something else? Is that something you just kind of intuitively think of, or like, do you have a system for that, or what does that look like?
I mean, it's different for everyone, obviously.
Yeah.
When I first started rowing, I was just completely overwhelmed, and I needed to spend all my time on rowing. And I think that was important because I was learning the sport and I was permanently fatigued as my body adapted to the heavy training load. But then within the past couple years or so, I really discovered and started having a love for having that balance in my life. And I've really learned that it really helped me. Some people, they just want to focus on their sport, and that's totally fine.
Right.
But for me, I really enjoy being able to leave training and not think about training again. You know, I put down my oar, I walk away, and then I totally leave my mind, and then I come back the next day and start over again. And I try not to waste too much mental energy during my downtime. I used to think about rowing like all the time. Like, it was just like everything I would talk about, I was obsessed with it.
It's got to be impossible to turn that off.
Yeah,
it's amazing you can do that.
It's an addicting thing, right? But
for sure.
I started realizing that it was not necessarily benefiting me, and that being able to go and focus on other passions was not only a mental recharge, but it invigorated me and made me more passionate when I was on the water.
Right. I think it is very important having that separation, especially because like there's nothing like sport that gives you that adrenaline rush, right? So that probably is like the highest moment you're going to have in your day. And it's like, it's hard not to always kind of go back to that. But if you can separate it, I agree, right back out into that zone the next day. I want to talk about the next step. So I mean, you've hit number one. What are the next steps in your training and what are your targets you're trying to hit?
So right now I've been taking a few months just to have fun, focus on school, and have the first break I've had since I started rowing.
Yeah, so it's probably well deserved.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I just need to have a break.
For sure.
But obviously the Olympics are now like, it's not a quad anymore, as in 4 years, it's 3 years. So that's on the back of my mind, that I have to go back to training relatively soon to start building that base up again. So in January, I will be returning full time to training. And then in the months leading up to that, I'll start doing more training on my own. But as for what's next, I really like challenges, and I'm not really one who likes to necessarily just sit at the top. So I have been thinking a lot about how I want to approach training and what boats I would want to be in. And I like the idea of maybe training in a different boat or taking advantage of opportunities that would maybe be uncomfortable, such as putting this out there, but sculling, because I have a sweeper, which means I have one oar. So I'm looking for more opportunities to expand my repertoire in that way, and put myself in a more uncomfortable position, because I think that growth really only comes from being uncomfortable. And if you're completely comfortable, then it's like great, but you know, you're just comfortable, you're going to sit there.
I fully agree. Those
little steps.
One of my memorable business coaches told me, like, run towards the uncomfortable. That's like how you're going to get through it and get comfortable with it. I love that. Awesome. Avalon, this has been so nice catching up. I really appreciate your time. And maybe we can do this again sometime if you take home another gold. I appreciate you spitting in.
I really enjoyed your questions, and I thought it was an interesting conversation. So yeah, I'd be definitely down to pick this back up another time.
Sweet. All right. Well, best of luck with the rest of your training and your semester, and we'll talk soon. Thanks for joining us here today on Healthspan Academy, guys. We'll see you next time.